George Lindbeck, I mentioned earlier, he makes this really great point that justification is a meaningless doctrine unless it's grounded in the atonement. And if we don't have the substitutionary atonement, then justification is just suspended in midair. He says, I've been involved, he's a mainline Lutheran, I've been involved in the Lutheran Roman Catholic discussion for decades and decades. And he says, even if we could reach on paper an agreement on justification, it's vacuous because both sides, and not just mainliners on the Protestant side, but evangelicals too, on both sides, he says, there's no atonement grounding the justification. And when you talk about evangelicals, he says they're all Arminians.
Yeah. Wow.
And he says, if you have basically a I'm saved by my decision kind of theology, whatever you have said about justification, whatever you've said about the cross, is taken away with the left hand in the process. And justification is grounded in the atonement, isn't it?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that's amazing to me that Lindbeck would say that. That's promising. He, when I was at a liberal seminary, was the representative from Vatican II who came back giving reports that were still hot, because they just happened. But if he sees this in evangelicalism, if I were an evangelical, I'd be nervous.
Yeah. It's remarkable that so many of the people saying, hey, where's the cross? I don't hear any more about the cross, are not always evangelicals, but very often are post-liberals, people who have seen where it all leads and are saying, ooh, turn around, go back.
The ironic thing is we do hear, in some instances in the church, you do hear much talk about the cross, but it's not a cross with blood. It's usually picking up your cross and following
your
Jesus.
cross.
Your cross.
Yes. And of course, there is a sense in which that is biblical, but if you do not understand the cross, then your cross really doesn't matter.
Right.
Well, we're right back to the biblical language of scandal. This message offended people when it was preached in the first century. Paul was run out of how many towns by rock-throwing mobs,
Yeah.
If you're targeting a particular audience and you want to reach people and be as inclusive as you can, this has to go.
Yes.
So
You just have to get rid of this because this is going to run all those people off.
So the way faith is often presented today, it's have faith in Jesus that he is your problem solver. Or have faith in Jesus because he wants to have a personal relationship with you. And so now I'm justified by a personal relationship with Jesus. Paul here is saying, no. You're justified by faith in his blood, specifically in his blood. That is the object of your faith. And only in that way are you saved from the wrath of God. And if you don't believe in the wrath of God to begin with, and you don't hear about the wrath of God, and don't have a sensibility to the wrath of God, then being saved by his blood really doesn't have any meaning.
That's the whole point of the earlier chapters in Romans, to remind us that there is a holy God who is wrathful toward sin and that he's not George Burns.
Yeah, I think when Paul in 2 Corinthians warns about another gospel and another Jesus being preached, he doesn't mean someone masquerading as Jesus, but what he means is preaching Jesus apart from what he has accomplished in terms of fulfilling the substance of the Old Testament.
And the Bible itself, when they asked him, why have you come? He talked not in terms of his teaching, but in terms of his death.
Yes.
Why are you here? The Son of Man came to give his life a ransom for many.
For this reason I have come.
And so when Paul says in Galatians, he speaks of another gospel, one that is not based on justification, understanding the gospel of grace, saving grace, absolute free grace, then in the same sense, we are preaching another Jesus. And I think that's what we are seeing today.
I think the fruit of that's evident.
People are preaching Jesus, and it is Jesus of Nazareth, but it's Jesus of Nazareth where the blood or his death is minimized.
Yeah, Jesus as your coach, Jesus as your best friend, Jesus as your locker room buddy, Jesus as your therapist.
Jesus the preacher
CEO.
on the Mount of Beatitudes.
Well, it's a beautiful thing in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 5, when John sees the scroll with all the 7 seals on it, and no one is able to open it, and he begins to weep. And then one of the elders comes over to him and says, "Don't weep. The lamb, or the lion of the tribe of Judah, has prevailed to open the scroll." John turns around to look for the Lion of Judah, and what he sees is not only a lamb, but one that is slain. And then the song that is composed that they sing, the new song that they sing, is "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, and by his blood he is worthy to open the scroll."
Great point.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
You sometimes have people who will set one of these things against the other in a way that the very text that you read, Mike, doesn't. Reformation people will talk about faith alone. But under questioning, what we're saying is Jesus' blood alone, or just by itself, as opposed to anything that we would contribute.
Including faith.
Including faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Including faith.
In Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis has that great scene of the death of innocent Aslan, which gives him, Aslan, the right to later declare the former traitor Edmund the Just.
Yes.
And that's what's going on here, as Paul said in chapter 3, verse 26. Christ propitiating the wrath of God, his propitiating death, reveals God as just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. He can only justify the ungodly, the helpless, the sinners, on the basis of someone else's obedience and suffering. There's only one way through this, right? I mean, this is what Paul has set up in the previous chapters.
I'll tell my students once in a while, if you get 5 minutes, you're at a cocktail party and you get 5 minutes in passing conversation, I recommend that you go somehow to the depth of sin, illustrating with your own, not theirs, and maybe from some literature, and then to what was accomplished at the cross by Christ's blood. If you've only got 5 minutes, at least touch those two.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end than by quoting one of Ralph Erskine's gospel sonnets. Ralph Erskine was an 18th century Scottish minister, and his gospel sonnets are beautiful. Here's one we can close with. Summarizing this passage that we've just been looking at, "The second Adam, sovereign Lord of all, did by his Father's authorizing call from bosom of eternal love descend, to save the guilty race that him offend, to treat an everlasting peace with those who were and ever would have been his foes, his errand, never-ending life to give to them whose malice would not let him live. Law righteousness required must be procured, law vengeance threatened must be full endured, stern justice must have credit by the match, sweet mercy by the heart the bride must catch. Poor bankrupt, all her debt must first be paid, her former husband in the grave be laid. Hard terms indeed, while death's the first demand, but love is strong as death to take the upper hand, to carry on the suit and make it good, though at the dearest rate of wounds and blood. The burden's heavy, but the back is broad. The glorious lover is the mighty God. His love admits no parallel, for why, at one great draught of love he drank hell dry. No drop of wrathful gall he left behind, no dreg to witness that he was unkind. The sword of awful justice pierced his side, that mercy fence might gush upon his bride. Well, thanks for listening to The White Horse Inn. Remember that this program comes to you each week because of your faithful support. And for those of you who have profited from this and you'd like more people to hear it, we need to hear from you. Give us a call at 1-800-890-7556. That's 1-800-890-7556. Or head to our website at whitehorseinn.org. Look forward to being with you again next week on The White Horse Inn, where we're continuing the Romans Revolution.